Welcome back to Talk Sports NFL YouTube channel. I'm Brian Smith, joined every couple weeks, and love to have him on the program. Dan Graziano from ESPN, NFL Insider. How's it going, Dan?
I'm doing great, Brian. How you doing?
I'm good. I honestly, I probably feel like you might do at times with all your crazy hours. I was in Dublin as of this morning, so
Oh,
I'm still adjusting a little.
gotcha. You got to see the Aaron Rodgers Steelers while you're over there?
I think his name is Aaron
Yeah.
Rodgers, MVP. I think that is how we refer to him now.
He's been what they wanted. They're 3-1. Somehow they do this every year. They just seem to be better than we think, and then they kind of
And then they tail off.
do this. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll
I'm
see.
like you. I was talking to Will Gavin on our post game show live in Croke Park, and I mean the atmosphere was incredible. And Aaron Guinness talked about, he loved the Guinness, and the NFL just really, outside of maybe one incident, nailed the trip and just continues to
Hmm.
expand internationally. It was really amazing just seeing Croke Park packed. But it was interesting. Will and I were talking post game on our YouTube channel, Talk Sport USA. And, Rodgers, I mean, he clearly, he can't run. I mean, he might scramble for 15 yards, but he's not mobile. And you keep waiting for it to end. And then he throws that bullet to DK Metcalf. And you're just like, man, I mean, this thing could actually work if he can stay healthy. And if the defense plays like this, but you could almost
That's the thing.
see a little of what they were envisioning, but it's all got to work. And like you said a couple weeks ago on this show, can it work for 17 games and the playoffs? That's the real test.
Yeah, I mean the defense was good yesterday. It hasn't been. They won in week one, a back and forth game against the Jets because the Jets fumbled a kickoff and then the Steelers made a 60-yard field goal. And then they won in week three in New England when the Patriots turned the ball over 5 times, and they still had to score at the end to win. So if you're a Steelers fan, I think you come out of this week four feeling a lot better because the defense played well, and the whole thing just feels like a little more of we won that game as opposed to we had one handed to us.
So let's get into somebody who's not winning at all right now. And I don't know if you've had any, breaking news alerts on your phone, or you broke any news in the last 10 seconds while we've been talking, but is Brian Callahan still employed by the Tennessee Titans? There's a lot of smoke right there.
As far as I know, you want me to check?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cam Ward is
I
calling his team
yeah.
out already, and he hasn't won a game yet. What is going on with the Titans, Dan? And is there any way that they retain Brian Callahan through this season if this does not dramatically improve? And I don't know how that happens.
Right. Well, so I mean, look, it's worse than I think people expect. Even if you didn't expect the Titans to compete for anything in Cam Ward's rookie year, they've been worse than I think even they or anyone else would have expected.
Yeah.
I was texting with some folks in Houston last night and this morning about their first win of the year. It's like, you feel good having won a game, and they do, but it all comes with they think. I mean, like Tennessee, they can't believe how bad a team Tennessee has. So
That's funny.
Yeah, I think it's got to get better. I always say you never know what's going through the mind of the billionaire team owner, right? So if they decide to make a move, I don't think anybody would be shocked, but it is also too early in the season for that. So it's his second year there. I think if you draft Cam Ward number one and your coach is supposedly a quarterback guru who has some history developing quarterbacks, you probably have to let this thing breathe a little bit.
Yeah.
I think part of the criticism he's getting has to do with some of the game management stuff and some of the things he said in press conference that might have reflected, not necessarily knowing what was going on in some of those games. But and that obviously hurts him. But it's nothing a couple of wins wouldn't fix. It just feels like with the Titans, they're so far from winning that I don't know where that's going to come from. But yeah, I think he has kind of moved to and this is all speculative, the front of the sort of the hot seat line based on the way this season has started.
So we're still a few weeks away from the trade deadline, but we just saw, speaking of the Texans, who got the first win, and I wrote today in our Super Bowl power rankings, does it really count if you beat the Tennessee Titans? But the Texans trade Cam Robinson to the Browns, who are coming to Tottenham to play the Vikings. We'll get into that in a second. But, sometimes that first trade can maybe open things up. Obviously, this was an isolated incident because, Robinson has a has a bit of a backstory, and the Browns need help on the offensive line. But in terms of teams who could be looking, players who could be moved, Russell Wilson, Tyreek Hill, what are you hearing? What are you sensing with the trade market? And is there anything that we should be looking out for right now on talkSPORT?
Yeah, you're looking at veterans on those teams that don't feel like they're going anywhere this year. So you mentioned Russell Wilson. The Giants have Jameis Winston as well, and they're starting the rookie Jackson Dart. So maybe one of the veterans gets moved at some point if somebody has a need and feels like Russell Wilson could fill that need. Same kind of thing with Tyreek Hill. If the Dolphins, who were recording this on a Monday, they're playing tonight, who knows?
Right.
But if they fall to 0-4, that drumbeat will only get louder. The Saints, Alvin Kamara, he's a veteran running back and that team doesn't seem to be going anywhere this year. So those kinds of guys are the guys that we're watching. The Cam Robinson deal, Cleveland, you mentioned, has a need. DeJuan Jones, their left tackle's hurt. They haven't had any, so they make a move. And Houston, they are getting good play from their rookie, Ariante Ursary at left tackle. So Cam Robinson, who they signed before they drafted Ursary, becomes expendable. So, we have a month till the trade deadline, roughly.
Yeah.
So we'll see it start to pick up. But through 4 weeks, I think some teams have a pretty good sense of like, all right, are we going to, like, the Giants already benched Russell Wilson. I don't know what they're doing with him, why he needs to be on the team if they have Jameis Winston as Jackson Dart's backup. So, I think you'll see over the next couple of weeks as teams assess, are we contenders? Are we pretenders? What do we need? You'll see the usual team. The Eagles, I'm sure, will make a move or two. The Chiefs, I'm sure, will make a move or two. Teams that always do. But big name veterans who make some money on teams that look like they're more than a year away.
You mentioned Alvin Kamara. The Saints are 0-4. You have Spencer Rattler at quarterback. I feel like the Titans are not going anywhere. Would there be any way for the Chiefs, who have had running back issues all year, and he's a dynamic player? I could only imagine what Alvin Kamara would look like in an Andy Reid offense, and the Chiefs might be back. The Chiefs looked fantastic against the Ravens. Could that make sense at all?
Yeah. I think there are a lot of people sort of connecting those kinds of dots. We've heard Tyreek Hill and the Chiefs because of his history there. But, Kamara would make more sense, I think, as in terms of what they actually need for their offense, because they thought Isaiah Pacheco was going to be really good, a little further removed from last year's injury, and he really hasn't been. They started giving some work this week to Brashard Smith, who's a 7th-round rookie running back that's kind of a pass catcher, get him out in space type. And I think you'll see him more involved. But in terms of the sort of starting running back job, they probably could stand to upgrade. I think a lot of people think as you do. Alvin Kamara, a pass-catching running back in an Andy Reid offense, all of a sudden you're starting to think about like LaShawn McCoy and guys like that from years past. And it's fun to think about.
One more team for trade-wise, Jerry Jones and the Packers and the Cowboys, just a literal barn burner last night that unfortunately
still going.
Exactly. Yeah. Ended in a tie. But Jerry has talked about, he will make a trade, and the Cowboys, they can score, and Dak is an MVP candidate, but they can't really defend. And they gave up Michael Parsons. Do you think Jerry could do something with those picks before the deadline to try to help his team in a loaded NFC?
It would surprise me to see the Cowboys trade away first-round picks mid-season for a right-now helper. They've done it. Most recently, it was Amari
Cooper. Yeah.
And that was a year when Dak was struggling. They didn't really have a number one receiver. At the time, Amari Cooper was still a very young veteran. And the Cowboys basically said, where we're going to be picking in the first round, we don't think we're going to get anybody as good as this guy. So now we're going to use our first-round pick on him. So if a situation like that happens, but when you see the Cowboys acquire players via trade, it's often a guy on a rookie contract, a guy who's still relatively young, a guy that they had a good evaluation on in the draft and want to take a chance on because his other team has given up on him. It's happened. They traded for a receiver last year, Jonathan Mingo from the Carolina Panthers. That was the rationale there. They traded for Kyer Elam, the cornerback from the Bills, this offseason. So those are the kinds of deals they like to do. Get a young player in, they have some control over contractually, and then see if he can reach his potential with them. So the instant impact move, the Amari Cooper kind of move, is uncommon for this Cowboys regime. Yeah. if it presents itself, let's. I mean, like, like a Myles Garrett. I mean, he's not getting traded, but let's just hypothetically,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
veteran like that on a big contract. That's probably not what would appeal to them. But if you think about a younger pass rusher whose current team is either not happy with him or has a need the Cowboys can fill via trade, then yeah, I think that's probably. But those guys, good young pass rushers, don't really become available very often. The Packers certainly were happy that one did.
Speaking of Myles Garrett, the Cleveland Browns will be in London for the first of 3 NFL games at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I will be there with talks.
Helping you with your transition. That was good, right?
There we go. We're doing TV and radio at the same time. And it'll be broadcast live on talkSPORT. You can obviously, follow everything on the YouTube channel, talkSPORT USA, our website, talksport.com. Dan, Joe Flacco, Browns fans want him bench. NFL Twitter wants him bench. It's just not working. They've got Dylan Gabriel, who keeps coming in for mop-up duty in losses. Mm-hmm. And they've also got a guy named Shedeur Sanders, who we talked about before with you. Is there any shot that Joe Flacco does not start this weekend against the Vikings at Tottenham? And either how you answer that, where do you think this goes with the Cleveland Browns and their quarterback situation?
I think we're nearing the point where they probably are considering a change. And I think Kevin Stefanski, their head coach, had a press conference today where he kind of didn't really commit to who's playing quarterback.
Which is always the first sign, right? Like, that's the first sign that something could happen. We've seen it enough.
So if they do make a change, the odds-on favorite to have the next chance at it would be Dylan Gabriel. He's been ahead of Shedeur Sanders on the depth chart all along. He was drafted 2 rounds earlier. And as you mentioned, he's the guy they're putting in the games. He's been the number 2 on game day. So it stands to reason that would be the guy they'd turn to when they decide to move off of Flacco. But we're not at their practices. We don't know. Maybe if Shedeur Sanders has surpassed Dylan Gabriel in their eyes, then they could go to him. We've seen stranger things. I continue to believe we'll see both of those guys at some point this season, because I think the Browns have to make an evaluation of what's on their roster before they go into next year's draft with 2 first-round picks and potentially, address the quarterback situation there. So, but I think if they do make a move for this week ahead of their London game, then you're probably more likely to see Gabriel as the starting quarterback than Sanders. Now, then what? Like, was Flacco the backup?
Yeah.
Does Flacco become the number 3 and Sanders elevated to backup? That could tell you a little bit about where they are in their evaluation of Sanders specifically.
Oh yeah, and Deshaun Watson is still sitting out there. All right, let's do something. Let's talk about something positive. Not trades, not injuries, not benchings or firings. Puka Nacua, 5th round pick.
Yeah, wow.
BYU. You'd have to be a college football nut or a BYU Cougar fan to really know him before the draft. And, maybe it appeared a little even last year. Okay, he had the great rookie season, and then he's good, but he's not great. And then all of a sudden, this weekend with Matthew Stafford throwing for 350 plus, he has 170 receiving yards. The Rams are 3-1. They have a good defense. How did they find him, and how has he developed into one of the best young receivers in the NFL?
So he didn't run fast in the pre-draft process. He had a slow, I believe he was at the combine, had a slow combine time, but whatever, his 40 time wasn't any good. So that obviously knocks down receivers. But the Rams would tell you that they have their own sort of, and a lot of teams do, but they have their own sort of proprietary metric whereby they measure speed. It's game film as opposed to 40 time in Indianapolis, that kind of thing. So they thought this was a guy that people are going to overlook because he doesn't have the measurables. But the way we measure and evaluate him, we think he can be special for us in our system. So he hits right away as a rookie, obviously. Cooper Kupp is coming off, he was Super Bowl MVP and still but obviously he was getting close to the end. So this offseason, they get rid of Cooper Kupp and they bring in Davante Adams, who at this time in history is a better player than Cooper Kupp. And you see it, like they're playing, like the Eagles, and Quinyon Mitchell goes with Davante Adams the whole game, which, that tells you how other teams are looking at Puka Nacua still relative to Davante Adams. He's not a guy that's going to, be a great separator downfield and get open like crazy, but he'll win contested catches. He plays physical. He's hard to tackle. He'll block in the run game, which they want their receivers to do. So, he's been an exceptional player for them, and we're coming up on the end of year 3, which is time to pay a guy. So it'll be interesting to see what he commands if he's having. The start he's off to he could be having an historic season and really be in the conversation with the highest paid receivers pretty soon.
Speaking with Dan Graziano, NFL insider for ESPN, he's everywhere. First, get up, you just find him all the time. Sunday countdown. Dan, a couple more for you before we get out of here. The New York Giants, Jackson Dart, just embraces the spotlight. They beat the Chargers. I mean, 1 week Justin Herbert is the best quarterback in the NFL, and the next week they can't beat the New York Giants. But they also lose Malik Neighbors. Is there, which is just horrible, bad luck, bad timing. I think a two-part question. Number one is, how can they address that? Because obviously they're all in now with Jackson Dart. And number two, all this talk, and this goes back years, right, with the turf and MetLife. I mean, Aaron Rodgers comes to mind and the other injuries. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that the Giants or the NFL would actually do to potentially fix this, or is it just is what it is?
So the first part with the Giants, they can't replace Malik Neighbors. They don't have anybody, few teams do have anybody of his ability. You'll see Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, guys that have been on their roster for a while. Maybe Jalen Hyatt, who was a relatively high pick for them a couple years ago, hasn't done it. Maybe he can ascend a little bit. But Jackson Dart can run a little bit, as we saw in his debut, and they can do some more things in the offense. It would benefit him and them, of course, to have Neighbors. His development will be affected by not having Neighbors. Yeah. But they'll move forward with him and do what they can. And the MetLife Stadium turf, I mean, this is something that has come up a lot. And turf in general, the Players Union has spoken out against artificial turf fields, wants to convert to all grass. The team owners don't that have artificial turf because they want to have, concerts year round and all this kind of thing. So easier to maintain. The league would push back and say there really aren't any studies that show the natural grass is safer. And, it does seem like people get hurt at MetLife. That's certainly its reputation. And it's obviously not going to be helped by this. But I don't think that the league is anywhere close to telling its 32 teams, hey, you got to go to natural grass, because the league is the owners and the owners that operate those stadiums, in this case the Jets and the Giants. They're going to make a lot of money off of these stadiums, and part of the reason is they have a surface that can be used year round and doesn't need to be replaced all the time. It's funny, like in Denver the last 2 years, that new ownership group, Walton's, it's Walmart money, they're loaded, they can spend whatever money they want. They've replaced their field midway through each of the last 2 seasons. Wow. Like, just because they wanted it to be as new as possible, what they do is they have the bye week. So whatever their last home game is before the bye week, they roll in the trucks with the sod right after that game ends. And then they let it sit for a couple weeks till they're back. And the rationale is, we want our players to be on the highest quality field all the time. Not everybody has that kind of money, even NFL owners. But yeah, that's an interesting contrast in terms of what they're doing out there in Denver versus the ones that want to stick to the turf. All
right, we'll get you out of here with just a few rapid fire really quick. Brock Purdy, it comes back, throws for 300 yards, but I just saw a report that Kyle Shanahan mentioned that he was dealing with a toe injury again. Is that any real concern for the 49ers?
Sure, they play Thursday. Yeah. So the fact that he shows up on Monday and the toe's bugging him again, and by the way, the backup, Mac Jones, hurt his knee in their Week 3 game, so we don't know if he'd be ready to go Thursday. So, yeah, the 49ers always seem to be in the middle of this sort of avalanche of injuries, and this year has been no exception. But, we'll see. Kyle Shanahan said that in his news conference on Monday morning that, that Purdy came in complaining and they just really don't know if he'll be ready by Thursday. Could be. Yeah, I think it's going to be a matter of getting him on the practice field, see how he feels, what he can do. But, that one's still worth watching for sure, especially on a short week.
Yeah, the irony of Mr. Irrelevant getting paid like crazy, and now he can't stay healthy. Bryce Young is, took the step forward at the end of last year, and the Panthers are just, they can win one game, then they get blown out. Mm-hmm. This could be a long answer, so we'll make it really quick. What do the Panthers do with Bryce Young, and do they even have to worry about their head coaching situation?
I don't think they're unhappy with their head coach. Bryce Young hasn't performed consistently, and that's a problem. They thought he would pick up where he left off at the end of last year and build on that, and he hasn't. He's shown some stuff, but he's also been in and out performance-wise. I don't get the sense that they're where they were this time last year when they benched him for Andy
Yeah.
Dalton. Could that happen at some point? Sure. But they really want to know what they have here. It's his third year. So next May, they have to make a decision about his fifth year option for 2027. So they need as much data as possible. So it's 4 games in. If over the next 4 games he looks like he did last December and January, cool. All systems go. But the fact that he hasn't hit the ground running this year is disappointing to him, to them, and to their fans. And certainly they'd like to see more of those signs before they commit to something like a 5th-year option or a new contract after this season.
Last one for you, Dan. Roger Goodell was in Dublin at a pub, at a bar, and mentioned that Asia is up next after Australia for the next international game. But he didn't give any specific countries. Asia is quite large and has a lot of countries. Any insight, any top 3 ranked best bets for where you think the NFL could go when they go to Asia?
They'd like to play in China. I think that's been out there for a while, and I don't know where that would actually be. There's been talk of whatever, Beijing, Hong Kong, like that, so I think that's probably, when he says Asia, that's where my mind goes, just because that's what I've heard the most talk of. They had a meeting a few years back where they kind of went through all the potential international destinations and how realistic each one was. And obviously Asia's tough because of, it's farther away.
Yeah.
And so how do you do it travel wise? How do you make it fair? But the fact that they've now done Brazil a couple times, which is an incredibly long flight for NFL teams, and they do it that first Friday, right, of the regular season, so no one's had a game the week before. I think that's a step toward being able to play in farther flung places. They want to open up new markets. They want to open up new revenue streams wherever possible. And so, yes, they'll continue to push on that. I believe they'd like to have an international game every week if they could.
Yeah.
And so,
Roger Goodell, we've reported that at talkSPORT. I had a big 18th games story, and Goodell said those exact words. It's always been hinted at the last couple of years, but they want 16 games and every team playing one home or away game.
Yeah, and that's their ideal situation. So I don't know if the coaches and GMs and players would agree that it's an ideal situation, but too bad. That's where it's headed, and I think we're only gonna see more expansion of international games in different markets.
Dan, great stuff. I feel like we covered the whole league in about 23 minutes.
Yeah, awesome.
You can follow Dan on Twitter. He's on Get Up. He's on Sunday Morning Countdown. He's all over the place at ESPN. You can obviously follow everything at talkSPORT on our social accounts: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube at talkSPORT USA, talkSPORT.com. Like, subscribe, follow, and we will be at Tottenham this weekend for the Cleveland Browns, Minnesota Vikings, with Will Gavin and the producer Tom and the entire crew. Dan, thanks so much for helping us out, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure. Enjoy the game.
Cheers. Thank you.